tabassum, 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 tabassum.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My topic is Dr. Yusuf Jasset, Health and Healing in Islam. Now, the premise of my talk is based on 3 ayats from the Quran. The first one says, O mankind, there has come to you a direction from your Lord and a healing for the diseases in your hearts. And for those who believe, a guidance and a mercy. That's from Surah 10, ayat 57. The second ayat is, we send down in the Quran that which is a healing and a mercy. And that is from Surah 17, ayat 82. And the third ayat, it says, say, the Quran is a guide and a healing to those who believe. And that's from Surah 41, ayat 44. Now there are several combinations in these 3 ayats. In the first ayat, healing is combined with diseases of the heart, plus belief, plus guidance, plus mercy. In the second ayat, healing is combined with mercy. And in the third ayat, healing is combined with guidance and belief. Now, what are the outcomes of healing? Healing itself is an outcome of belief, guidance, and mercy that give rise to other healings. When we look at belief, we know that belief is located in the emotional processes of the brain. And guidance is located in the reasoning processes of the brain. And healing acts as a preventative health strategy. And health combines prevention and cure. And there are different types of health. There's physical health, emotional health, mental health, and spiritual health. And these ayats that I've recited, they combine all these different types of health. Now the purpose of this presentation is to demonstrate that through the life of Dr. Yusuf Jasset, that in the 85 years that he is living, that any ordinary human being can operationalize the ayats of the Quran in everyday life. What are the requirements to operationalize ayats? There are 3 requirements. The first is belief, the second is guidance, and the third is mercy. And mercy implies that we must clean our heart of diseases such as anger, hatred, jealousy, grudge, and many other diseases of the heart. And we should, as Muslims, fill our hearts with mercy, because mercy is part of a preventative health strategy and a healing strategy. Let us look at very briefly the biodata of Dr. Yusuf Jasset. On January 13, 1949, he joined the Transvaal Indian Youth Congress, and he has been serving the ANC for 68 years this year, which is 1 more year than the service given by President Nelson Mandela. In his childhood or in his early youth, he was the chair of History and Debating Society at the Johannesburg Indian High School. And there he developed a love for history and argumentation. And the teacher that influenced him the most at his high school was P.S. Joshi, who developed in Dr. Yusuf Jasset the consciousness of apartheid, colonialism, and imperialism. And most important, he helped Dr. Jasid develop a lifelong habit of reading. In 1951, Dr. Jasid was elected the chairperson of the Transvaal Indian Youth Congress, the president of South African Indian Youth Congress, and he was co-opted as an executive member of Transvaal Indian Congress. Plus, he served on the Youth Action Committee, which was a combination of the ANC Youth League, the Transvaal Indian Congress Youth League, the Natal Indian Congress Youth League, and the Young Communist League. In 1951-53, he completed his Bachelor of Science degree at Wits University. In 1955, he joined Wits Medical College. In 1959, he began becoming very dangerous to apartheid, in that he joined, or he was recruited into the MK Guard unit, which was later converted to the Reconnaissance Unit. And the task of the members of the Reconnaissance Unit was to identify buildings for their sabotage campaign. In 1960, he qualified as a medical doctor, and 2 years later, he opened his famous Bree Street surgery, where he became very hyperactive. In 1964, February, he was banned for 5 years. And on May 24th, 1964, the same year, he married Shireen Patel. And at his wedding, or before his wedding, he had to get the permission of the Minister of Justice, Prisons, and Police. And at the wedding reception, our women swore the special branch in the Gujarati language. After the wedding, his comrades in Fordsburg organized an underground wedding reception for him at the Lachpore Hall. In 1964, he was detained for 90 days without trial because he was suspected of making bombs because of his Bachelor of Science qualifications. In 1965, he was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment for breaking his banning order. In 1969, the second banning order was imposed on him that expired 5 years later. In 1974, he joined the Johannesburg Indian Social Welfare Agency, known as JISWA. In 1978, he helped found Solidarity Front, which opposed the constitutional proposal of the Nationalist Party. In 1980-82, he was elected the chairperson to oversee the deracialization of all the social welfare organizations in South Africa. In 1981, he was elected the chairperson of the Anti-South African Indian Council Committee. 1982, he joined Central Islamic Trust. In 1985, he was rewarded for all his efforts by being charged for high treason in the Pietermaritzburg High Court. In 1991, he was elected the chairperson of Talimul Mosque and Madrasa Trust, and a year later, he was elected the trustee of Suleiman Nana Memorial Trust. In 1994 to 2000, he served as a member of parliament, and in parliament, he served on a number of committees. And one of the committees was the Ethics Committee. And in the Ethics Committee, he was shocked by how some senior ANC leaders used loopholes in the rules to evade censure. This is his 57th year in practice, and in these 57 years, he's performed 40,000 circumcisions, which averaged to 2 per day, and every circumcision was faultless. Now, I've recounted this brief biography of his to show evidence that he was very active or hyperactive in three broad movements. The one was the political liberation movement, the second was in the field of medicine, and the third was in the field of social welfare. And for him to have done this, he would have had to sacrifice valuable family time. And for this, we thank his wife, daughters, and son for sacrificing their family time with their father. Now, he did all this, not for fame, fortune, glory, power, or money. He did all these only to serve people. And by serving people, he operationalized the three ayats I have quoted par excellence. And he showed that the Quran is for the masses and not for an elite. Now, he was filled with mercy and love because the Quran commands that. And he showed how love can grow out of mercy. And he exemplified the hadith, which says, postulate for your brothers and sisters what you desire for yourself. And he also demonstrated how love developed his healing hands, and how with healing skills he practiced medicine as a compassionate science, and how through political struggle for social justice he spread mercy and love. Now, by getting himself involved in these three fields of struggle, he was able to develop and create in South Africa for the first time what is now called the health management model. And the guide for this came to him from these three ayats plus a number of related ayats. So out of his political, social, and medical struggles, he developed the new health management model. And this model, with this model, he countered the then existing theory of germ causation of diseases. Now, what's the difference between health management theory and germ causation theory of diseases? And this can be demonstrated from the research that's being done into HIV and AIDS. Now, when you apply the first theory of germ causation of diseases, the researchers trace HIV to the year 1983. And when they applied the health management theory, they trace HIV to the 1930s in South Africa, when there was a rise in manufacturing industries in South Africa. And with the rise of manufacturing, there was concentration of people in cities. And it gave rise to syphilis amongst the migrant workers. Now, the very serious HIV/AIDS researchers, they use the health management theory. And they examine how does a virus, which is an HIV virus, interact with the DNA of syphilis, which is a bacteria, and the DNA of the host cell. Now, the answers to this question, a difficult question, will help explain why HIV/AIDS infection in South Africa is the highest in the world. And for this, in a little way, we need to thank Dr. Yusuf Jasset. Now, let's look at medical ethics. Under apartheid, South Africa was not signatory to the Geneva Declaration on Medical AIDS of 1948. Apartheid South Africa was not a signatory to International Code of Medical Ethics of 1949. And South Africa also was not a signatory to the Tokyo Declaration on Torture and Inhuman Treatment of Prisoners of 1975. Now this created a dilemma for Muslim doctors, and it troubled Dr. Yusuf Jassid, and his question was, how do we practice medicine along ethical principles when South Africa did not sign the International Medical Ethics Codes? And one of the reasons for the formation of the Islamic Medical Association was to introduce medical ethics into practice. Now, in 1982, Dr. Jassid launched and he founded the National Medical and Dental Association of South Africa. And 1 year later, on December 10, 1983, he gave an address at the annual general meeting. And the theme of his address was medical ethics, which he pivoted on the torture and killing of Steve Biko. And having done that, he went to outline the theory of health management model with ethical principles. And he concluded in that speech by re-quoting from his code of ethics, and he said, "I solemnly pledge myself to consecrate my life to the service of humanity," which he did for 57 years. Now let's look at his record of service. He spent 68 years in political liberation actively, 57 years in medicine actively, 43 years with Jiswa, and 26 years he served certain Muslim organizations. So there was a compound of 194 years compressed into his chronological age of 85 years. So he's a man of altruism, or a man for all seasons. Altruism is simply doing for people solely for their benefits without any thought of any selfish returns. And very interestingly, on July 11 this year, the University of Zurich had a group of its neuroeconomists do research into altruism, how it alters brain functions. And they examined the relationship between generosity of heart and happiness. And the study found that even a little generosity creates great happiness. And they also found that the intention to be generous, or what we would say the niyat for the generosity of hearts, triggers positive changes in the brain. And they also showed in the control group that people who solely act out of self-interest are less happy. So we know happiness is a consequence of the niyat of generosity of heart plus social conduct. And we know, as the scientists have shown, that niyat alters relationships between three different parts of the brain. In the one part, it affects positively pro-social behavior and generosity. In another part, it affects happiness. And in the third part, it affects the weighing of pros and cons of making decisions. So the study shows that making the right niyat alone generates neural changes even before action is implemented. Now, Ahmed Kathrada, who was Dr. Jassid's first mentor and lifelong comrade, he has recommended Dr. Jassid as a role model for the youth. And he said, Dr. Jassid is an ideal role model that should inspire young people to emulate him. So what are the challenges that face youth? And when I talk about youth, I talk about youth who are mental youth. There's no age limit to being youth. You could be 90 years old and still be a youth. Or you could be 14 years old and be senile. The challenges, I'm going to enumerate 9 of them. The first one is to overcome terrorism and violence. Second, to engage in dialogue and mutual consultation. 3, to confront painful matters and find solutions. 4, promote peace through safety and security. 5, learn lessons from hardships. 6, assert humane values and ethics. 7, resist cultural imperialism. 8, promote cultural exchanges on equal basis. And 9, make deep analyses of regional and world solutions. So my conclusion from the evidence that I have presented shows that, number 1, any ordinary human being can operationalize ayats in everyday life. And second, the Holy Quran is a book for the masses and not the theological class of the elite. Jazakallah.
تبسم وخل الهموم وخل الغموم وخل الضجر